Hi everyone, and welcome to our webinar, the first webinar from our new training centre. My name's Kevin Anderson. I'm the business manager here at ID Cyber Solutions, and I have Cary, our operations director. Oh, sorry, global operations director.
Facts matter.
Yeah. Who's going to run you through a bit of a cybersecurity talk this morning. It's Christmas time. Unfortunately, the hackers don't take a holiday at Christmas like the rest of us. So we thought that it was important to bring up the fact that, Christmas time is a time that hackers are really active. There's lots of things like Cyber Monday and Black Friday and everything else, and they're using these things to kind of attack our businesses. So over to you, Cary.
Hey, thanks, Kev. Like I said, well, Kev said, we're moving into Christmas time. We're trying to wind down for the year, and in this period of time, we'll be getting a whole bunch of stuff for our organizations. We'll be planning loads of events and so on. But there's always a need for security. Now, the issue with things like Christmas and Black Friday and everything else is that we'll be purchasing lots of new devices for our businesses, for our homes and so on. And they are often smart devices that connect onto our network. And if they are connected to our network, well, we want to be able to use them. And when we use them, those devices are then used to store information about us. So, for example, things like a CCTV camera may store photographs or video about our environment. Other devices may be things like phones, and so on, to try and store stuff on the cloud and so on. Okay. Now, the issue with all of these kind of devices is that they are being added to our network, and they have a network-based application that we can access. And in some cases, when those devices are breached, be it a camera that's exposed to the internet, an attacker may be able to access that device to either modify or hack it, or just view what is going on in it. And because all of these extra devices, our whole network and our whole environment is getting increasingly more complex, because we have to find ways to try and manage that particular environment. Okay, so what are the things that we're needing to be able to do? So we've broken it down into a very simple security, functionality, and usability triangle, where we're going to try and weigh up things like functionality, usability, security, for example. And we're going to try and create a balance between all of these things. Now, if we want to make things secure, we're going to have to turn some functionality and features off. If we want to make it usable and more functions exposed to the internet, well, we're going to have to move the pin away from security. And if we move stuff away from security, we leave our systems open to other attacks. Okay, so what kind of challenges do we have? Well, the first challenge that we have is compliance to laws and regulations. Now, some of those may be things like PCI DSS. Some of that may be something like GDPR or the Data Protection Act and so on. We may have people in our organization that work for us, but are they skilled and qualified as cybersecurity professionals? Now, they don't necessarily need to be an expert, but they need to be able to identify and check whether something is safe before it's exposed to the internet. Okay. We have a whole proliferation of extra services, things like Office 365, things like Dropbox, things that we store online, even Facebook, Twitter, all of those kind of places. our data, be it company data, personal data, and so on, is spread over the internet at various different places and organizations and so on. This brings up a problem because our privacy and data protection regulations suddenly now have to address things that are quite fragmented and complex, because we can't really pinpoint exactly where that bit is. Okay, so when the pandemic broke out, we all suddenly had to work from home, and it brought a whole new problem to the organization. Things like, which devices are we going to allow people to work from home on? So many of those decided, okay, well, I have a computer, I have a phone, I'm good. But are those devices safe? Have we checked those devices? Are we actually sure that those devices are actually compliant with a lot of the policies that we would normally have within the organization? Now, what happens at a service provider? A thing like, with the way you have uploaded your stuff to Dropbox or some cloud service and so on. Are those services protecting our data adequately? And we can talk anything here from the setup in terms of that we turn on multi-factor authentication, or are we still stuck with a username and password? Okay, so we need to be able to look at these kind of places and, of course, challenges to see how we can have a better configuration process to manage all of that particular data. One of those things is we have to go through our process of looking at GDPR and see what the requirements there are. So one of the major things in there is the integrity and confidentiality of data. Is my data stored adequately on the cloud or in an application and so on? Do I know if somebody is going to tamper with that? Okay, so with all of these kind of things, we have a process where we're going to say, we're going to have a strategy, and that strategy will be about our security. And that strategy will include things like policies, procedures, and awareness, all the way down to how do we manage data. Now, when we start looking at our data, we obviously have specific things where we can say, hey, I have a physical area where I store this, i.e. a building, a data center, and so on. That building or data center has a network perimeter. This is the router or the modem that your service provider has provided to you to be able to provide access to the internet. Now, that's fine, because on the inside of your network, you have your internal network where all the machines are. Data normally runs on a host, and on a host has an application where that particular data is stored. When we start looking at how organizations get attacked, the attackers are not really going to care about things like policies, procedures, and awareness. They're going to be actively testing things like that with phishing attacks, malware attacks, and so on. They're going to be able to try and get into buildings. They want to be able to discover what is on your internal network. So we have to have a strategy that we can work against these direct attacks. So what do we need to do? Okay, so they will be launching things like web application attacks against our services. They'll be attacking our web servers. They'll be sending malware. They'll be doing man-in-the-middle attacks, and also try and hack our systems. In terms of what we as an organization would like to do, is we want to protect our assets. We want to be able to prevent those folks attacking our systems. We want to be able to have some deterrence in place, like a firewall or something like that. We want the system to be able to give us alerts based on the information that the attackers are using to attack our systems. Can we see that they're actually attacking us? What do we do about detection? Right, so can we detect malware that is being sent? Or can we detect that they are trying to attack some of our web applications and so on? And generally, those are the most things that organizations do. But they forget about two very important bits. They forget about the emergency preparedness. What do we do if we do get attacked? Right? What is our plan? And if we have a plan, what is that response? Because if we don't have an adequate response or an adequate plan to get out of the attack, that may mean the end of our business. It may mean the systems go down for a very long time until we figure out how to bring them back online. Okay, so to demonstrate that, I am doing a live demo, and this particular live demo will involve things like passwords. Okay, so let's just go have a look and see. Usually, when we try and look at stuff, we first head over to Google, and when we head over to Google, we type some stuff in and we try and get some information back. Okay, so let's see how those things go. Right. Okay, so in this, I have a web browser. Generally, when we try and find something on the internet, so we'll just head over to Google and we'll type in some search terms. And in this particular example, we're going to ask Google to please bring back file types that are Excel spreadsheets. And we want those spreadsheets to contain the word password. So when we have that particular search and we have our results, we can see that the data that we're bringing back are all Excel spreadsheets. And we can see that those may have some information in them. So once we scroll down and we can find a particular thing that we want to download, right? So what we'll do is we'll save this and then open up our file. And we can see that we have found a spreadsheet with usernames and passwords and so on. Okay, so what are the other issues with finding stuff like this, besides privacy issues and so on? The issues is that in many cases, organizations will set a default password for users to log in. Okay, the users that log in often never change that particular password. So if they've never changed the password and I'm somebody else in the organization, I can probably have a good stab of what the default password would be. So default passwords, a big no-no, and we need to move on. Okay, in moving on. So consider this. You have a mobile phone. You've had a mobile phone for years. And if you were to try and retrieve your voicemail from your phone, say, for example, your battery has died, you can actually retrieve your voicemail from a different phone. And if you try and recover your voicemail from a different phone, you'll be asked for a PIN to type in. Okay, do you know what your PIN is? That's okay. It's probably one of these. Okay, so if you have a a mobile from any one of these providers, you can probably see that from Vodafone and 3 and Talk Mobile, they all have the same PIN. So does Mobile World, Virgin Mobile, T-Mobile. They all have the same PIN. So to guess somebody's voicemail password or voicemail PIN for any of these providers, you only have got a couple of choices to do. And even if you get it wrong twice, you may be lucky the third time to be able to get this. Okay, so what other things can we do to keep our businesses safe? For example, things like default passwords and so on. The government has introduced a scheme for businesses called Cyber Essentials, and it is trying to get organizations to have a base level of cybersecurity within their organization. Now, when they have this base level of cybersecurity in their organization, they normally target it towards things like generic IT systems. Now, things that we all have. We have a firewall or a router that we have from our service provider. We have a whole bunch of machines that is running on that internal network. We maybe have Wi-Fi and so on. And we have software on all of those particular devices. Now, they've made a list of all the common and unsophisticated attacks that can happen to your organization or against these kind of systems. And they've basically introduced a whole set of basic security controls that you can use to defend against those common and unsophisticated attacks. Okay, so please don't see it as oh, I have to do all these things. It's a case of, here's a list of attacks. Here is a list of things I can do to protect my organization. Okay, so to be able to achieve this, your system and assessment needs to be assessed by an assessor or verified, and usually very helpful in terms of trying to give you advice on how to improve things and so on. So what happens if you do it this year? Well, just like an MOT, next year, same thing. Okay, so just like as stressful as an MOT might be, you'll be like super relieved to say, we've passed, it's gone, I'm okay to drive to Tesco, I'll be safe, I'm not going to die. Well, at least not from your car anyway. Okay, so what kind of things are covered within Cyber Essentials? Well, remember those list of assets within your organization, all the layers and so on? So it starts off with things like your boundary firewalls and your internet gateways and so on. And it's just like your router or your modem that you have at home from your service provider. There's a couple of questions about that and say, hey, how have you set this up? Have you set it up? Have you changed the default password and so on? Okay. And then it moves on to things like secure configurations. Things like what kind of software have I installed? Do I have any trialware or freeware or stuff that we've installed on a whim, but we don't have an idea who installed it or something like that? We have options like access control. How did you set up the device? How do you actually gain access to the services and stuff that you have in the cloud? And by the way, the stuff in the cloud, did you turn on multi-factor authentication and so on? So it's got all those questions in there. So the next option there is, do you have antivirus? Does it work? How do you know it works? Okay, so, and then the last bit is there on patch management. And when we go into patch management, it's about, do you know the software that you have? Do you know that there are updates being published for those? Do you know how to apply them? In some cases for your operating system, those things come out every 2 weeks. Okay, so usually Microsoft has a day dedicated to this. The first dedicated day of this is the second Tuesday of every month, where it will publish and say, hey, here are all the new updates. And then 2 weeks later, it'll update a next set, which includes the first set of updates. But you need to have a plan in terms of going through this process, obtaining the updates, installing the updates, and removing software that are no longer supported. Okay, so what else can we do? Well, training. We train a lot of people, and a lot of people come through us going through basic cybersecurity, as in awareness courses, looking at how best can I protect my employees and so on. And there may be things like phishing platforms and so on that we can introduce you to. We don't sell anything like that, by the way. We just point folks into the right places. The other thing we would like to do to help businesses is help them understand some of the concept of some of the threats and how to mitigate them. Okay. The next thing is like a super important bit. And the super important bit is, if something does go wrong, how do we involve law enforcement? How do we engage with them? How do we get them to help us? Okay, so in that process, it's about trying to be able to collect some evidence, describe the process, what happened, and so on. Because the problem is, law enforcement look at a lot of incidents like this. So if you are in a specific sector, being education, in finance, construction, or any of those kind of things, maybe even a public body, if you are being attacked, there will be other advice that they'll be able to that they'll be able to give you, because you are probably not the only organization that is being attacked in your sector. So it's vital to engage with them. And it's not a case of we've done something wrong, or we're going to get locked up, or anything else. No, it's not about that. It's about working together for the greater good for everybody, every business, and so on. So we all know about the threats and how we can protect our businesses from that. And it's about everyone participating, right? Right from our front door staff to our regular staff, even the staff that work from home, and so on. It's about getting everybody included in this. Okay, so those acronyms at the bottom are some of our courses, where we have a digital forensics essentials course. It's only about 2 days long. You can attend it. You can attend it online. The next one is an ethical hacking essentials course. Yep. Again, it's about what do hackers do, how do they do it, and so on. And the next one is the network defense essentials. It's about what can I do to put things in place to protect my organization? How do I defend myself against some of these threats? Okay, so finally, I believe it's only been a half an hour. We'll be taking some questions through the chat. The chat's open if there's any chat. Yeah, please, if you like to be in touch, please send us an email, contact us through Twitter, or send us a message through the website.
Yep, so thanks everybody for coming.
Yep.
We have no questions.
But
that's fine.
Yes, they're probably all stunned.
That's it. They're all stunned by your vast knowledge and our demos that worked very well.
Yeah.
But of course, all you guys on YouTube won't see those because I'll edit that out afterwards. So yes, thank you for coming along to our first webinar in our new training centre. It's been great having you here. And
look forward to seeing you the next time.
yes, and look for this on our webinar page on cybertraining.co.uk. Sorry.
Yeah, cybertraining.uk, yeah.
So cybertraining.uk is our new cyber training website, and there's a webinar section on there that links directly to our YouTube account. So you'll be able to catch up on the webinar there. So thanks for coming, guys, and we'll catch you next time.
Cheers, bye.